I remember the smell of the ocean that became stronger or weaker with the pulsing of the waves. I remembered the crisp ocean water soaking me in with my pant leg. I remembered the post-hike ache in my feet and how it subsided as I stepped barefoot on the rounded stones on the shore. I remember the screams and hollers as locals jumped off the pier. I remember the chalky earth on my hands from the climb. I remember being lost in the realization that I was a traveler and that this must be my first step on a long journey. I remembered Dover. I remembered the bike bells ringing. I remember the smell of fresh bread mixing with coffee shop smells. I remember the steep climb to my hostel bed. I remember the canal tour signs, one for each language. I remember red lights. I remember the most striking mural of Van Gogh on the canal side of the shop. I remember not remembering. I remember Amsterdam. I remember the excitement coupled with sorrow as we embarked on our last trip here. I remember the slow transition from industrial to rural, from contemporary to historical. I remember the ocean, always on our right, granting us treasures as we drove past. I remember waking to the air release on the bus, not knowing where we were. I remember stumbling outside to find we had stopped in a small town. Little did I know this would be one of my favorite stops. I remember walking past the rest stop building to find a small harbor much like home. I remember the waves rolling in softly with the ocean breeze, causing dinghies to bump up against the docks. I remembered the accent of the fisherman and his unleashed dog standing attentive as his old man untied his boat for launch. I remember the honk of the bus horn as we were called back to our travels. I remember Ballycastle. I remember being excited, and I remember being nauseous. I remember feeling ready to jump out of my seat as we climbed the hills in our small van. I remember leaving the group to stand in the rain, to feel the drops hit my face. I stood there looking out toward more hills, not knowing what was ahead. I remember my head against the cold van window, drifting in and out as our driver told lore. I remember the trees arcing over the van, moving us as if through a tunnel up this hill. I remember feeling my heart sink, my jaw drop, and my eyes water as the trees broke to the rusted hills, locks, and glens that came next. I remember the sense of awe sweep over me, not in waves, but in one continuous flood that went on for hours. I remember falling in love. I remember Glencoe.